Live now. Okay, so welcome everybody who is paying attention and showing on up and all that good stuff. I am Dr. Anthony Bean, and I think the phrasing we used in the Kickstarter was lead directive architect, was the phrasing or something like that. Imaginative architect. I don't remember. Anyways, I am Dr. Anthony Bean, and I run Geek Therapeutics along with some really wonderful and important people. And we have actually a couple of them tonight. Do you guys want to do a quick rundown of you? Doesn't matter who starts, or otherwise I'll just popcorn you.
I'll jump in first then. My name is Ben Mandal. I'm one of the professional GMs that works with Geek Therapeutics. I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Bean on developing some of the course structure for the 9-week GM training course, as well as working on some of the behind-the-scenes things there. I've been running RPGs for a few decades now, and it's been my pleasure for the last couple of months to be one of the people teaching various clinicians, social workers, and teachers about how to add GMing to their arsenal of tools.
And you are finishing up one cohort and starting another one in September.
This will be my second cohort, and I'm looking forward to running a third.
Get always great reviews from you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I'm going to call on Lindsay.
All right, I'm Lindsay Grove. I'm a geek therapy trainee. I've been a school psychologist for about 15 years, 16 years, a long time. And just started using the geek therapy stuff in my practice at schools. So I'm loving it so far.
And Heather.
All right. I'm Heather. I am a licensed mental health counselor, certified alcohol and substance abuse counselor, certified geek therapist, and certified therapeutic game master. And currently working for a private practice. I like to incorporate any kind of geek fandom out there. Pretty much everything you find on the website, I am into. So yeah, that's me.
You're going to become one of our probably anime teachers, if I'm not mistaken, probably next year too.
Yes, so I am going to start working on some anime trainings, how to incorporate that into therapy. And I'm also starting a geek therapy vlog.
That's awesome.
Yes.
She's doing all sorts of stuff. She's awesome at figuring out transitions and everything. She showed me a couple, and I was like, man, that's like
The 10
StarCraft
seconds.
Protoss. Hey, that's like Protoss. That's important. I mean, that's an important one.
I was just messing around too. It was just messing around for like
was
15
good.
minutes.
It was really good. I was like, I don't think I can do that. You're already leagues ahead of most of us, I feel. But yeah, so basically, one of the big things that we're kind of here today to kind of talk about a little bit is really what we're talking about is the geek therapy intervention, writing tricks and tips. And one of the, I would say, important ideas is we use this in a lot of different areas, such as video games, anime, fan fiction, pop culture, comics, superheroes. I even see some esports players, TTRPGs, as we've kind of seen. We are doing pretty much a lot of intervention work with a lot of these people. And when we do that type of intervention work, the question always comes into play. How do you document this? Because you can't just go and put to an insurance company, hey, I played video games with a client, or I went and we watched an episode of anime and then discussed it. Because I can tell you that the insurance companies will like to say, yeah, that's not a good one to be able to do. Like, we can't really pay you for that or anything like that. And they love to take their money back. So kind of what we're doing here today is we're going to have some fun and kind of go through each of these a little bit and to kind of talk about how do we write down our intervention plans and engagements to really hone in on making sure that we're writing everything appropriately, but also having fun when we work with our clients, because that's really what the important thing is, meeting the client where they're at and utilizing a lot of their own benefits to really surpass their one limits, but also grow. So I think all of us have kind of used a lot of the things that I just showed on the previous screen: pop culture, D&D, TTRPGs. But one of the big things I really wanted to start off with is my favorite thing, and this has been going around the internet for a decade now, is when we interview people and they put in their resume or CV or something like that, some sort of raid lead or guild leader experience. How many of us have kind of done that in your CV, and how have you worded it? Just this is like our fun icebreaker.
I haven't yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, fantastic.
I have definitely done that. It's along the lines of managed large groups of people and communicated effectively in large group tasks with a common goal, kind of thing. Yeah.
I like to also stress that it can be long term. Set meetings bi-weekly over a 2-year period for improvisational training and problem-solving skills development.
You are good at this.
He is really good at this. Like, he really should be one of us. It's insane how good he is at this. The big thing that I want to kind of like point out and pick up on is you use the word training on that one. That's a big word in our field, is being able to train and being able to do a lot of different things with our clients. Train them to effectively speak, train them to cope with this other idea, to be able to do that. Those are all very what we call buzzwords that we tend to use. And as long as we use those specific words, nothing really kind of comes into play. But I wanted to kind of popcorn this back to Heather, because she's used this specifically in some format of tell us about that experience. What experience is it, and how did you rework that into that CV to not just get a job, but also be able to be like, these are viable skills that we're teaching through the game structure?
Yeah. So essentially, you talk about raid leading, and that would have to be World of Warcraft back in the vanilla days, where I did lead many raids of all sizes, but 40 mans. I did do 40 mans. I was class lead and healer lead because that's just what I play. So, I was playing a priest. So I was class lead for that, so that any other priests in the guild, if they had any questions, or I would kind of analyze their gameplay and see if there were anything that they could do to improve, as well as throwing out heal assignments. And,
in which case, I wonder if the word mentorship could be used to describe a lot of that.
And leadership.
Yeah, I use leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And also supervised in a sense. So in that regard, that's kind of where I started honing these supervision skills, and actually ended up with a supervisor position because of me putting this on the resume, not like I raid led 40 people to I don't know, to kill Blackwing Lair. I don't know.
You're pulling out some old cards on wow.
yeah. So or Nax Ramus or something. Like I
one of
led
my
a 40
favorite
man
raids.
up Nax.
But that's
Oh
the
my
thing.
god, so good.
It's I think there's a big similarity here with, like, your billing. You have to summarize maybe an hour of incredibly intense, heartfelt communication with a client in a few sentences so that you get paid. Conversely, if I tell someone who hasn't played WoW, my raid group cleared Nax Ramus first try, they have no idea just how much dedication, skill, and preparedness has to have gone into that.
Mhm.
And I would be impressed that you just did that.
Yeah, that's impossible. In vanilla? Come on. I mean,
I'm completely lying through my teeth. I've
that.
never done that on the first try. Absolutely not. But
There
you
were
know
people,
enough to
yeah.
appreciate that.
There were people, though, that in Classic, they did clear it first night that it came out, but they were prepared, and it's Classic. They already knew what to expect.
Absolutely. So these are the fun types of things that we can do just with video games. I actually want to popcorn it over to, and I'm using popcorn a lot. I'm really tired, guys, so I apologize on that one. But we're gonna popcorn it over to TTRPGs, because this is going to be the fun one with Ben a little bit of kind of how do we reframe a 2-hour session of engaging our clients a little bit to be able to handle a lot of stuff through a TTRPG session.
We're practicing group dynamics. We're practicing socialization in a peaceful environment. We're using problem-solving skills with our peers.
Role play.
You're using your executive functioning skills to
team building.
Team building is a good one. What about the idea of the conceptual idea of avatar play? Because this is a big one for what are they called? Play therapists, which we are in the process of getting accredited for.
When you say play therapy,
thinking of it as kind of like LARPing.
So providing intense emotional experiences while maintaining a structured and safe environment to experience them in?
I think that's a really, really good one to be able to do that. And this is why we think Ben is amazing, because he just took all of that psychological stuff and made it so if someone read that and they'd be like, oh yeah, you did a great job, check, this hits the boxes on that one.
Well, some of this is a thing that we've talked about before several times, Dr. Bean, that gaming and therapy have a lot to teach each other, that one area has already spent years researching but hasn't thought to tell the other. There's the concept of bleed that mostly shows up in the LARPing community but has started showing up in tabletop, discussing the effect that in-game events can have on our real-world emotions. And I think there's so much to be said by having the gaming researchers speaking with the therapeutic researchers, because everything we're talking about right now is bleed.
What, just so if people who may not be familiar with it, what is bleed?
Hey, Lindsay, we're playing a game and your character just screwed up. And me, as the game master, I'm the vampiric lord of the castle, and I spend 2 minutes real time angrily yelling at you what a massive screw up you are. How dare you do this? What the fuck do you think I'm doing, placing my trust in you? And then how are you, Lindsay, the player, going to feel in addition to how your character reacts?
Yeah. And I can imagine, like, I would not be able to send kids back to class if that happened, because that would bleed over and, like, they would not be okay.
it's the merging of basically the player's experience within the game to the outside, and like blaming. It's in psychology we like to call it projection. So we could even rework that one into the idea of projected upon individual role playing characters to be able to benefit role playing techniques in real life circumstances and scenarios. Boom, that's a quick intervention. These are the quick ideas to just change certain things that come into play when we are using geek interventions, which is really, really important. Lindsay, you actually have a really unique job because you're a school psychologist.
Yeah.
How do you use this type of stuff a little bit?
So like my job is really interesting because I'm kind of I I write my goals before I even start seeing my clients, which are my students. Because like our process is we do mega evaluation starting with like academic and that kind of social emotional, look at how it's affecting them in school, and then we tend to use kind of a set goal bank for goals, so that that wording is already set up for us. But then I also have to justify to teachers, because I will get, well, you're just playing games with them, how is that helping? um, to administration, my principals and my bosses, because again, I'm just playing games with them, and then to parents. And when I started doing D&D groups last year, that was kind of my big worry, because of the historical perception of D&D among some communities. Like my own mom, when I started playing, she's like, "Oh, that's really dark, isn't it?" I'm like, "No, it's fun." Like, it's fun gameplay. So that was a big nervous part for me, and luckily I had parents that were like, "Oh my god, that's so cool." But I look at it like, what basic skills do they need? So like I have kids that struggle with social pragmatic language. So that is role-playing games right there. Like we're learning how to communicate and solve problems. I also do a lot of work with interpersonal problem solving. So this again, it's perfect for that. Well, we're coming up with conflicts, because I can't just spot problem solve, and that can't be therapy every week. Like I have to create problems myself. Um, so then I work social pragmatically and like social problem solving with my kids. A lot of kids with ADHD and executive functioning, I actually do a lot of Gundam building with them, because
I love miniatures.
yeah, and I do too. I have a huge like you can kind of see some of them behind me, like Legos, and then my Evangelion stuff behind me. But because it's step-by-step problem solving, or step-by-step following directions, paying attention to details, perseverance to get it to work right. So like I've become adept at like kind of justifying everything I do. Like, yes, I'm taking them to play a game, but I'm also teaching them that when they don't get to pick the color they want, how to solve that problem. Which is, I work with elementary school kids, so I work from 5 to about 12. And that's a big problem for kids. Like, I didn't get to be blue. I'm not the mage. Like, one of my D&D groups, one of our big problems was the other Dragonborns were making fun of my venom breath, my poison breath Dragonborn, because her breath was stinky.
Common thing with kids, just so we're all clear.
Yeah. So kind of dealing with that and that social problem solving, and that's super easy for me to justify, but on the surface, sometimes it's hard when kids come back to class and they're like, "Oh yeah, we just played D&D for an hour."
But it makes me think how, forgive me, this is where I don't have the therapeutic terminology, but if we just do a role play of, okay, now imagine that the bully's teasing you, what are you going to say? That can come across as very boring and dull. Mm-hmm. But even a very basic scenario of, all right, the bandits are attacking the city, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Through analogy, it gets the players into that same headspace, which they could easily translate into their real world responses to a similar emotional stimulus.
Yeah. And kids aren't stupid. They, like, if you're doing the role play of the bullies, like, they know what they're supposed to say. But when you put it in a different scenario or something they're uncomfortable with, then they're using the skills but not just parroting back what they've learned. It's really interesting because the short game that I played with my 5th graders last year started out with a knight kind of bullying some peasants in the town square. And like immediately those kids right away were like, yeah, we're going to fight and kill this bully. And I'm like, do you guys see what you did? You were really honorable.
Well, it provides that measure of distance from reality, because we're not wearing armor, we're not carrying weapons and magic spells.
Yeah.
So some kids, just like a lot of adults, have trouble getting into character. They feel like, I'm going to look silly and embarrass myself if I play this too deeply. But if I have that security of, okay, it's a high fantasy setting, it gives me permission to jump into that role really strongly.
And what you just said was provide security.
Yeah.
Be able to role play. Those are buzzwords, and those are keywords for us as geek therapists to be able to utilize those to bring the kitty in. Lindsay, come on, the cat's super.
This is my Final Fantasy cat, Luna. She's hungry. Oh, now she's running away.
Now she's like, oh, you want me now? I'm
Human, you're neglecting your responsibilities. Why are you wasting your time on meaningless drivel that isn't feeding her?
Or watching space. She also really likes to watch space. So Star Wars is her favorite movie.
That's really neat. I like that. A good intervention of watching something. Kind of a good segue into what do we do with anime, movies, things like that, of when we have to provide homework, because that's another one of the big things of us to be able to say, we required them to do this between now and next session to show that there's going to be some sort of growth, but it also helps to give us a conversation. I'll let Heather go with the anime first, and then we'll move on to movies.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So I actually recently did this with a client who's been experiencing a lot of anxiety. Just recently got into anime, was watching, and I give her credit, Naruto, and is almost on Boruto.
Oh my!
So
already? That's so many episodes.
Not really like recently, but like just starting in the anime world. Like this is the only thing she's been watching.
That's still a lot.
So yeah, it is. She's been watching for a while, but never really ventured out to any other animes. So I had spoken to her. She was having a really hard time with anxiety, with situations that she would be put in. I was like, I got some homework for you. I want you to watch a new anime. Watch the first 3-4 episodes of Demon Slayer. And we're going to talk about that, in our next
Great
visit.
anime.
Oh my God, I can't wait for season 2. And that movie was amazing. So she ends up coming back having watched the entire season. Is like running in the door. I watched it. And I'm like, okay, great. Did you identify with anybody in there? And, sure enough, does anyone want to take a guess who she identified with?
You said high anxiety?
Yes, high anxiety.
Yellow.
Lightning dude.
Yeah, I can never remember his name.
I know.
Zemitsu?
Yeah,
right?
Zenitsu.
Zemitsu? I don't know. Zenitsu, I think.
Yep.
But the one who's very concerned about finding a girlfriend and not dying?
Yes.
Preferably dying first, not dying first.
Yes, but extraordinarily high anxiety all of the time, and is only super powerful when he's unconscious.
Yes.
And he is very powerful. I love him when he's unconscious.
I really feel like he could take on some of the leaders pretty simply with his abilities.
Yeah.
And just one ability, really. He only knows one form.
Yeah. And I didn't understand, because I saw Mugen Train before I went back and watched the anime, because Alamo has really great anime. Like they played Love Live for us. We had Evangelion in the theater. Like I get to go see all this in the theater. But I never understood that until I went through and watched the series. And now I want to watch Mugen Train again, just knowing what I know about both Zenitsu and handsome boarhead.
I'm like, he's
Inosuke?
Sanosuke. Yeah.
Oh,
Inosuke.
such such a
Inosuke, yeah.
great character.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Especially knowing that he's pretty under there, and that's like a big thing for people.
So Heather, how did you kind of like write that up in a note, such as like homework for the next session, and then how did you document the ability to connect to another person or a form of media?
So I wrote it up as that the homework assignment was to watch that anime.
Okay.
And that we would be discussing the experience, the emotional experience in the next session as the homework. And then in that session, I wrote it up as, discuss client's experience watching Demon Slayer, client expressed, whatever emotions she felt and explored which character she identified with and why, and then kind of wrote a little bit about that.
So the big keywords on that one are identification, character identification, the ability to relate, relational, and then probably someone would be able to infer in there the ability to then expound upon it in your real life as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to note, the session prior, she was very, very depressed. The next session, she was like a completely different person, so happy and excited.
Mm-hmm.
I think that with the clients that I tend to see is anime tends to be one of the big hallmark signs right now, because if you look at any of the anything, there are you can't keep up with how much anime comes out each day. You just can't. There's not enough hours in the day of how much comes out. And I think that that's where a lot of the teenagers and everything, especially during the pandemic, came together to be like, well, I've got nothing better to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to watch some anime. And then they get kind of like hooked into it in a good way. Be like, oh my God, this is so good. It's such a juicy story. One of my favorite stories to relate on this one is that there was a girl who we went into a mental health hospital over here, and this is inpatient, and she was she was labeled as a psychotic. And so we go in, we evaluate for the state, and we go in there, and after about 20-30 minutes, she started talking about something. I'm like, that sounds familiar. Is that from an anime? And she had like the hair like all over her face, kind of like the girl from The Ring, like, just had that, like, is a very, like, when you see that, very nonverbal, stay away from me, don't come near me type thing. And when she realized that I asked her about that, she like looked up and parted the hair, and we started talking about Fairy Tale, we started talking about Black Butler, we started talking about a whole bunch of other stuff. And it really kind of turned out that she wasn't psychotic. She was so depressed because no one in her family understood her. She was one of 4 siblings. Mom was divorced, doesn't watch anime or anything like that. So some of the interventions that we actually had to do with her was pull mom into session. We're going to watch this 20-minute episode, and then we're going to have a discussion about why this is important to this person. And she had a really hard time talking about that. But go on, Ben. I'm sorry.
It sounds like something that all these different forms, gaming, anime, comics, could all talk about is shared language.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that could be another keyword to use when writing up these reports, because what you were doing is basically establishing shared language between parent and child.
Absolutely. Yeah. And creating a bond between them, because we forced her to watch Cowboy Bebop with her because it was an 80s and it was something that the mom could potentially relate to. And then it kind of led into Demon Slayer and all the other really good ones. And she's actually now fully functioning outside without we got to discharge her because she doesn't need us anymore. She started using the tropes that you find in anime to start interacting with other people. And group projects were the worst for her because she hated interacting. But as soon as we kind of just reframed some stuff, and that's another key word, just reframing. When we reframed that into an intervention for her to be like, what does this person remind you of? And she's like, from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And I'm like, hold on to that thought because I'm going to ask you which character. And then we went through each group. With it, she was then able to be like, oh, I recognize these people. I know how to interact with them because I've seen how they interact. And she came back the next session and she's like, this was way easier than I was expecting. And to be able to do that, that's the power of what we're doing.
And I have a similar story to that, like not as extreme, but like I got a boy referred to me, a 11-year-old. And everyone was just all of a sudden very concerned, like he has his head down and he's not talking to anyone and something's wrong and you have to talk to him. And I just pull him in like, hey, I'm just trying to get to know you. And like, what are you into? And he's like, oh, I watch anime. I'm like, oh, what have you been watching? Because I need something new to watch. And I'm almost finished with this. And it turns out like super into Promise Neverland.
Oh, I've seen that. I thought the second season ended way too soon, and I was like, what happened here? Like a big build up first season.
And I haven't gotten through that one yet, and he just glowed. So it's nice for me to be able to show that evidence of like, no, he's able to make connections. I'm not concerned about something severe going on because he is making connections with me. The next, I have it hanging up on my fridge. He brought me like a Promised Neverland picture he drew at night. And I'm like, guys, like you just got to make that connection. And that's kind of the big buzz in education right now is building relationships, especially with trauma informed care.
One danger that I would be cautious about there, God, it makes me feel old when people refer to the animes that I got into being an otaku with as, oh, the old classics.
I know. I noticed that too because I just started watching Cowboy Bebop, but I should have watched that years ago.
Oh my god, it's the best storyline and the best ending for good cannot exist without evil, and evil cannot exist without good. Oh my god, it has the best ending. So good.
See, and my favorite of like kind of those classics is Trigun, and I think if I didn't work with kids, I'd use Trigun a lot more. I can't because gun school. But the idea of someone not wanting to be violent but then like kind of put in that role, I think would resonate so much with school kids because that's a lot of what I see is these kids kind of like, well, you labeled me as bad in kindergarten, like so I'm just going to be bad now. And I feel like Vash the Stampede is like the perfect example of that.
Oh, he is. He's the $1 million bounty man. I mean, it's a simple, easy one to resonate with. I think that's a big thing that we tend to see across, even when we do RPG characters, is loss of family stuff, orphaned individual at an early age, ostracized person. Those are like the most common stereotypical tropes that we see as people and as trainers and as therapists that come into our people. If you really look at anime and everything else that kind of comes on out, you will see almost 99% of it comes from abandonment, from some sort of other area of where they are being bullied. And that is one of the best ways to connect with it because we've all experienced it, whether we're a geek or not. We've all experienced bullying. We've all experienced some sort of abandonment. We've all experienced some sort of loss. That is one of the best ways to obviously get these medias to be able to do that and create that shared connection with them, to build rapport, to be able to do a lot of these different things.
When I think when I write notes or if I'm writing in IEPs, individualized education programs, that's one of the big things I use is shared connections, building relationships, especially since schools now are focusing on trauma-informed care. And that's one of the biggest treatments for trauma is rebuilding those connections and relationships.
How would you write that up? In a sense, in a clinically, type thing, rebuilding connections, fostering positive experiences,
providing examples of positive relationships, reframing childhood experiences, and like even if I was writing it in like one of my reports, I'd probably even put like we're working on rebuilding those neurological connections to increase attachment to school.
Which is a very easy way to do that, especially when you have a school counselor being like, yeah, hey, you want to watch an episode of anime and then let's chat about it for like 10 minutes. Kids are usually like, from what I hear around here when we bring that into the schools, they're like, can we come here every day and talk? And you're like, I have 400 students. Let's see what we can do about it. But
it creates other problems being the coolest person in school.
It does. But it also has its benefits. What about
And
comics and superheroes? I'm sorry, Ben, I interrupted you.
No. A very small side benefit might also be increased respect for the kids' interest amongst not just their peers, but also the faculty. Especially for some of the older teachers, there might be, oh, anime, that's all the Japanese porn cartoons, right?
Eh.
That is what
Well,
they used to think.
Just to piggyback on that, Ben, I mean, that's pretty much, just stating that you were building therapeutic rapport, which is what you have to do in the first few sessions anyway. And this is a really great way of building that rapport.
And really, it kind of justifies like that client-centered therapy anyway.
Yep.
So
I also love fan fiction, making my kids write fan fiction with me in there, and I'll participate with them, where I'll have them either choose a character that they really like in an anime, a TV show, comic book character, something like that, to then like, let's spend 5 minutes. I want you to write whatever you want on this character. I want you to put him through a story, and I'm going to put mine through a story. We're going to see how we can merge these together.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really good combination tactic to be able to, like, how can someone's experience be over here? And you can use the same scene, you can use different scenes, you can use a whole bunch of different things.
What you've just described is a sort of long-form RP style, sometimes known as blue booking.
Say a little bit more about blue booking.
I don't remember where the term originated, but it shows up a lot in the LARP community. All right, you look it up while I say this part. It shows up a lot in the LARP community, usually to get downtime activities described, downtime being the space between games, where if I want my character, say, to use his wealth to hire a professional cat burglar to break into Heather's character's apartment and look for whatever secrets she's hiding, I would write up maybe half a page or more explaining both what my character's doing, who he's hiring, how he knows this cat burglar. Meanwhile, Heather's also submitted her own Blue Book report of what she's doing without my knowledge to hideously thwart my plans in the background. The GM would get both of these, look at them, and privately go, okay, Ben, your cat burglar never shows up, and your bank account is suddenly drained of all but $17. Heather, you successfully assassinate the cat burglar that Ben hired, and you then steal $20,000 from his bank account with your professional hacking skills.
Getting a new computer there, Heather.
Sounds like me. Sounds like me.
So some people could take this as a very rote, mechanical, just I need to specify what I'm doing, but others would write it as a lot more of a story, and it doesn't have to necessarily be as adversarial as the example I gave. It could be just literally a shared document where I post some stuff and Heather posts some stuff, regardless of whether our characters are at odds. It could be that Heather and Ben are intentionally writing together in a way to build the story.
So here's the history behind Blue Book. You guys all remember when we were in high school and we had to do tests and they handed us blue books. That's literally where it says the history is from. And
it makes so much sense.
It makes so much sense now. Like those stupid blue books, you're like, as soon as you see those, you're like,
ugh, yeah.
Why do I gotta do this?
I actually liked it though because I liked writing.
Yeah, me too.
So I was like, oh, blue book.
Yeah, not when you had my teacher. So kind of one of the other things here is that it says that you can use blue booking, and I'm going to read this word for word, is nothing more than writing out role-playing and conversations between characters rather than acting them out. Usually this takes place between game sessions, and the scenes can include thoughts or plans the character is having, private conversations with NPCs, private conversations between other PCs, player characters for those who don't know that, past history or future scenes, questions to the GM, and even more. So those are actually like, that's therapeutic intervention right there. So the fact, Ben, that you even brought this up is really interesting, and this is a therapeutic tool that we use for narrative therapy.
It sounds to me like that's just practicing empathy via the written form.
Or use of journaling. I mean, it'd be a good homework assignment. Use of journaling to explore feelings and roles and identity.
Yeah.
Another one that we also would tend to use is comics and superheroes. That's one of the
Mhm.
big ones that comes into play. My Hero Academia with Midoriya is a big one that comes into play. The new Marvel series has been big right now with the kids. DC isn't really that big with the kids unless your parents are big into DC, and then that's when I tend to see a little bit more of those comics coming in. What do we do with those ones, and how do we write in that intervention? Because that's a whole other medium, and to be
Mhm.
able to just write, go read, went gave homework to go read comic books, um, and then discuss with therapists later. That insurance companies and other people would probably look down on that. How would we kind of reframe that a little? It's a harder one.
Used bibliotherapy.
Ah,
Bibliotherapy.
logotherapy is another one that
Yeah.
we could definitely use in that one. What about the intervention in writing up that note when they come back? How would we reframe that instead of just like discussed Batman's historical relevance to clients' history?
Analyzed emotional responses in fictional characters the client strongly related to.
I told you to. He deserves to be a clinician.
He's just so
I
he's
can't
just so
compete.
fast. Like I could come up with these things if I had like 10 minutes, but he's like right on this.
I think it's his DM experience that just gets it like him in there
Mhm.
so quickly.
One example I can think of is I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but I'd written it in the style of, explored how to maintain gratitude in life, utilizing superheroes and an analogy of superheroes and villains where superheroes and villains, they can't exist without each other. So we might focus on all the villains of the day, but there are superheroes in there if we look. And to focus for every villain that we see, look for a superhero.
Or within ourselves is where can we
Or
also be
within
the
ourselves too.
superhero? I,
Yes.
I really love the quote is it's either you die a hero or you lived it long enough to see yourself become the villain, because I really feel like that's super true, because heroes really kind of get stuck into the feel of being a hero, and then they kind of, in my opinion, this is kind of where, if we looked at it from a mythology standpoint, they kind of get sucked into that, and like their way's the highway, and that's like the people underneath coming up are always like, yeah, but that's not how the world works. And then it just starts a new odds, and instead of being the hero, you actually turn out, oh, hey, you're the villain in this storyline.
Going back to how this could be written up, something I wonder, is there a way to stress that by utilizing comics, anime, games, etc., you're using a medium that the patient already has a very strong emotional connection to and has a deep knowledge of, versus going, hey, new kid, read this 20-page essay about Jung, and then we're going to start talking about archetypes?
I know some of my teachers when they would say that they had new clients, they'd be like, "Yes, I need you to read this book before a session next week." And it's like a big old thick on Jungian terminology and stuff. And I would look at them in the class and be like, "Why? Why? Like, what's the point?" Well, they need to know what I'm talking about. My first question was like, aren't you supposed to relate to them? Like that's why they're coming to you. Like there's a misgap there. And I think that's where a lot of people. So Ben, I really do appreciate that what you just said.
And I wonder if that would matter when writing this up for insurance purposes, of being able to justify, no, I'm not using D&D because I'm lazy. It's a mechanical system and um, verbiage that the
I have it
client is
though. I have
already
it.
familiar with.
I got one.
Oh,
Using
Lindsay got it.
client interests to engage more fully in therapy.
Absolutely.
I mean, engagement is a big thing in education too. So like that, I mean, half of my job is academic side too. And like, get them to read, well, give them comic books. It provides them scaffolding. Like they don't like writing or they have trouble with writing. Give them a storyboard and have them storyboard their ideas or comic book their ideas. Trick them into doing math with D&D.
It's an easy one. We call it like Mathematica or literacia. I think is what we have it in our therapeutic book on that one. Okay.
I have watcher comments is the educational term for what Ben just said is scaffolding, connecting new knowledge to existing experience.
Oh,
That's a really
Look
useful
at that.
term to know.
Yeah, I have a colleague watching right now, so
that's really, really good. Did he or she just text you?
yeah, she just texted me.
She's like, you forgot this word. Let's get this. Let's go on now.
No, didn't forget. Didn't know that word.
Yeah. That's what we call it in the education world. You're scaffolding, and I bet that would work really well for your insurance notes too.
It sounds nice and impressive.
When we start using big words, the people who look at them don't always know what they're doing anyways. They just want to make sure that they can follow it to a degree, and that you're taking notes, and that you're doing something. So I wanted to kind of like end us on a fun little mini game. I'm gonna say a word, and I want all of us to kind of like figure out. It's a specifically used a word for intervention to use it in a geek therapy standpoint. So, such as one of them would be coached, in a sense, is coached individual through Midoriya's historical presence and how he related to the people around him to build up his own confidence. So something like that. You can use any of the geek therapy domains. So whether it's D&D, whether it's anime, video games, pop culture, the whole shebang. We haven't even gotten to memes, and we won't get to memes because memes are just amazing to use. I love it when my clients bring in memes. They're like, have you seen this one? And they're like swiping their phone. They're like, oh my God, this is the best thing. Text it to me, please.
Yeah.
It's great.
I got to teach a bunch of kids about IKEA Monkey.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so neat. So the first one I am going to do is guided.
I would think, could I use it in like a guided imagery kind of thing?
Absolutely. Any way possible.
Like utilize guided imagery by creating a world in which clients could have any power that she wanted, and how this power, and discussed how this power would be utilized, and then depending on whatever the power is, usually they'll pick something that is reflective of kind of the things that they're struggling with, and it's something that would help with that, and then kind of end in a sense of explored how to apply this superpower to daily life.
I can't use explored. Thank you.
Yes, you can. I'm just going through like an entire note, but like for example, I did this earlier today where I had a client who's really having a hard time with self-esteem, and they picked the superpower of being able to read minds. So I asked why, and it's because they want to know what other people think of them. So I kind of explored the pros and cons of that, and actually towards the end, she was like, yeah, I'm actually kind of glad I don't have that superpower, because I might not want it after the first hour.
What about you, Lindsay? Guided. How would you use that?
I was actually thinking about the hero's journey, and like thinking about like guided client through through hero's journey using familiar examples and related it to their own life and their own progress.
I mean, it's a good
Ben's
one to
ready
do
for
that.
this.
Ben's gonna have like 15 by now.
I know.
Mostly I was leaning towards guided group of clients through shared scenarios to allow them to judge not only their own responses but each other's, while responding individually to the same stimuli as a group, then discussing why they chose the answers they did.
I think insurance would love that. All right. How about if we did reframed? That's a fun one.
mind if I take this one first?
Yeah.
So I'm not actually going to have to write this in notation style, but you'll forgive me as I'm a GM, not a therapist. That just makes me want to hand everyone a scenario where they are playing as the usual villains and monster races of high fantasy, and give them a lesson based on, okay, you are all ogres, and you're really hungry, and the humans don't trust you. What are you going to do about it? And try to give them that experience. Okay, this is not the normal scenario. How are we going to adapt to it?
That's a good one. I like that.
I got one. Worked with client or group of clients to reframe familiar characters to encourage perspective taking. Because I work with a lot of autism and Aspie, so I mean that's a big goal I work on.
How about you, Heather? Do a video game one. You can do it. I got faith.
A video game one?
A video game reframing.
Are we hinting at that example from weeks ago? Well, I mean, I don't remember how I wrote it. So essentially the story is that I am currently helping a client who feels that they have not learned adulting skills enough to actually go out and go to college and get a job or even maintain a household. So I am reframing this struggle in the form of a video game that he is now playing called Adulthood, and and these skills are quests that the client is going on, and some of them are multiple step quests, and some of them are not. Some of them are side quests, and some of them are main scenario quests. And once a quest is achieved, he levels up.
Good one.
I don't remember how I wrote that though. It was probably a very long one.
That's okay. I mean, the important thing is that you were able to utilize it in a really easy way of using video game terminology, the actual lingo of the game, to bring the client through the practice of how do we engage the world around us if we're going to just only think that it's a video game, or if we have to utilize what our favorite things are.
Yeah, like the first thing was, he really didn't like going outside of his room. So we kind of turned that into the tutorial phase where we kind of explored the map and unlocked the map of the house. And then we expanded it to outside, the road that led to the CVS that he would frequent not as often, but it was the one thing that got him out of the house, but utilized it in that way. And reframing it, you're not just going out and socializing, you're unlocking the map.
Ben's gonna like this one. Collaborated.
Sorry, collaborated?
Collaborated.
Encouraged group collaboration to achieve specific ends designed to promote teamwork while providing sufficient opposition on an improvisational basis to suggestions provided by client group, aka GM'd a session of D&D where they all pulled off a heist and I kept responding with problems no matter what they did.
I give up.
And he basically said what I was going to say, except better.
Yeah. Like way better.
Mm-hmm.
Can you write my notes for me, Ben?
No kidding.
My rates are very reasonable. Honestly, I think we need to have a session next week, Dr. Bean, talking about perhaps the biggest mistake I see all of these wonderful therapists and professionals making, which is this is terrible client retention. You said it yourself. You try to get rid of your clients, they don't need you anymore. And honestly, you are not going to be able to afford my rates if you keep losing clients left and right like this.
We have to stop being so good at our jobs.
Oh my gosh. We have to be part of the terrible therapeutic crew that we all know some people. Curious.
I'm just saying, client retention. We're talking long-term income, baby.
You know, if we were aiming at that, we have ways to make that happen. I feel we could do that. All right. Last one we're gonna do is reinforced.
Reinforce previously learned skills by working together to solve problems towards a goal.
Reinforced previous therapeutic interactions and goals to reach a next milestone. Boom.
Yeah.
The quick sentence.
Reinforced positive relationships.
Boom. There's one. You just did it in 3 words.
Something maybe about reinforced temporal stability through repeated regular meetings with client group.
You could easily do that, yeah. Well, I appreciate you 3 coming on in and having some fun with me tonight. This was a lot of fun. I always love doing this stuff. Where can people kind of find you if they want to pick your brain and have Ben write notes for you?
What I'm hearing is I need a bit more of a web presence, because right now the best way to find me is going to geektherapeutics.com.
We're going to get you to host some stuff. Come on.
What about you ladies?
You can find me on geektherapeutics.com as well. My private practice, Bavoy, BAVOY.org, or the parent 24-hour status on Discord, DJ Star, STARR, Fire, FIRE, number 8900. I don't have social media.
That's her power number, just so we're all clear.
It's not. It's the number they generated for me. But if I had a choice of a number, it would not be that.
I am mainly only on Twitter. It's at MabelGirl3, MABLEGRL3, and that's also my Discord handle.
And I'm Dr. Anthony Bean. You can find me on Geek Therapeutics as well, or just interacting with any of our pages online, Instagram, pretty much there. Just search out at Geek Therapeutics and you'll find us.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate everyone's time tonight, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
It was fun. Have a good